Okay, do you guys know what's going on right now at the Supreme Court? We are literally discussing whether we should geld children. That's right. That conversation is now at the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Very recently, oral arguments because of a Tennessee law that banned transing and gelding the kids that the federal government sued over because they really want to chemically castrate and eventually chop the genitals off of minors because of this death cult, this perverted, I'm going to call it pedophilic, that's right, pedophilic, transgender, mafia, LGBTQ, LMNOP, demonic legion agenda that cannot be negotiated with. It actually just has to be utterly crushed. We'll get into all of that on this episode. What a sign of the times. Share this. Let's get people enraged to join the fight to protect America's children. Welcome to the Seth Gruber Show.
Over 1 million children were killed in 2023 in America.
Children are always the unconsenting subjects of progressive social experiments.
What if the culture war was just a proxy war for the spiritual war? What if Satan masqueraded his demonic assault against the image of God as just a science and just a politics to keep the politically impotent pastors silent?
We live in the culture of death called, why is abortion demonic? Because Jesus came for you to have life. The devil came to steal and kill and destroy.
We won't do for good what the other side is so zealously willing to do for wickedness.
Join us at Life or Death Con on January 23rd in Washington, D.C. Head over to lifeordeathcon.com to get tickets today.
Life or Death Con, baby. Lifeordeathcon.com. You got to be there. All right, if you're an audio listener and you didn't see the screen, all right, we've got Allie Beth Stuckey. We've got Eric Metaxas. We've got Dr. George Grant. We've got Dr. Nancy Piercy. We've got Isabel Brown. We've got Joshua Broom. We've got AJ Hurley. We've got Pastor Gary Hamrick. We've got Landon Schott, pastor in Texas, one of the most politically involved churches in the country, flipping seats with Christians. It is going to blow your mind. It's going to rip your face off. This is our first annual. We're going to do this every year because we need bold, evangelical, unapologetically Christian leadership in the fight for life, and now in this post-Roe moment where the fight for life is so local. We've only got 1,000 seats. Go to lifeordeathcon.com, lifeordeathcon, like conference, con.com to get your tickets. And if you're an ally of the White Rose Resistance, right, $35 a month or more, here you go, right? You get your ticket for free to Life or Death Con, January 23rd, the day before the National March for Life. So you guys might remember this. It wasn't all that long ago. It must have been a year and a half. Tennessee, thanks to, by the way, a lot of the work of Matt Walsh and Daily Wire, exposing Vanderbilt Children's Hospital that was doing transgender drugs. That'd be puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones on minors, including, if I'm recalling correctly, including some of the surgeries. They call them top and bottom surgeries. All that means, by the way, is like if you're a dude, you're chopping off the family jewels. Do you understand what I'm saying? And then they take flesh. This is nasty stuff, guys. I don't know if you've seen the photos of this. I actually see the photos of this stuff. They take a bunch of skin off of your arm as a dude, as a woman to construct a fake penis. Or to construct rudimentary, surgically altered fake female genitals where your male testicles used to be. This is the most disgusting stuff you could possibly think of. That's some of the stuff that Vanderbilt Children's Hospital was doing, but particularly as it pertained to children. And so thanks to the work of Chloe Cole and Matt Walsh doing these rallies, exposing what was happening at Vanderbilt, eventually, Tennessee legislators got a fire put under their butt. Praise God. By the way, that's why activism and citizen journalism is so important. Well, it's right. Showing up and raising your voice is so important because legislators and elected representatives, they listen. They get afraid of the kind of the rage, the anger of the people. And they're like, oh, maybe we need to pass a law to keep the base happy, right? It's like, that's good. That's self-government. It was a good thing. Tennessee passed a law that banned transing minors. Right? So if you're under 18, it doesn't matter the situation. You cannot get gender-affirming health care. And you know what that means, right? That means puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. That's illegal in the state of Tennessee. Well, then the Attorney General got involved, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. One of the things that makes this story absolutely hilarious is that the lawyer from the ACLU who took the case, what I'm talking about the federal government's case against Tennessee. The Biden administration, the federal government sued Tennessee. You can't pass a state law that says you can't geld the children, okay? And guess who the lawyer is? A transgender identifying lawyer at the ACLU who takes the first transgender case that just went before the Supreme Court. So it's a woman who thinks she's a man, okay? And you're not going to guess what them's name is. Okay, her name, I know. But it's a girl who thinks she's a lad. Okay, stranger than fiction. Y'all okay? Are you ready? The transgender identifying ACLU lawyer who thinks that she is a man who just argued before the Supreme Court in oral arguments that we should geld the minors in Tennessee. Her last name is Strangio. Strangio. Sounds like some weird Marvel villain or something, or like some DC Comics villain, like Strangio. It's like pretty strange. What did Alexander Pope say? Got that beautiful old edition right there, collectible work on Alexander Pope. All nature is but art, unknown to thee. All chance, direction which thou canst not see. It's not chance, it's direction. It's not nature, it's art. I think there's an artist. I think there's someone giving directions, making these hilarious stranger than fiction kind of stories happen. My name's Strangio. I'm a woman who thinks I'm a man, and I'm going to argue that we should chop off your kids' genitals and chemically castrate them in the state of Tennessee. So that just happened in America at the Supreme Court. Now having to talk about, should we do this to kids or not? If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about the American culture war right now, I don't know what will. But first, we'd like to thank our sponsor of the Seth Gruber Show, Every Life Diaper. Do you have little ones still pooping in their pants? You need everylife.com. It's the only pro-life diaper company, right? If we're going to defeat woke corporatism and the culture of death, then we have to care as much about fighting with our dollars as the left does to fight for their vices with their dollars. Do you understand what I'm saying? Major corporations and companies that are in the baby industry support abortion. So if you want to defund a culture of death, you're going to have to actually invest in a culture of life. Do that by going to everylife.com, promo code SETH10 for 10% off your first order of diapers and wipers. And now Every Life has shampoos, conditioners, baby soaps, okay? Everylife.com. Make sure you get your diapers, your wipes for your babies. You got grandkids, okay? You got nieces or nephews having babies. You got your nursery at your church. Tell them, everylife.com. Promo code SETH10 for 10% off your first order, and let them know that we sent you. And you're supporting our sponsors, which supports the Seth Gruber Show and the White Rose Resistance. Go to everylife.com. Thank you for being a sponsor of the Seth Gruber Show. A couple takeaways from the oral arguments. You can go listen to the whole thing, right? It goes for about 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's quite hilarious, actually, to listen to. Because, you got Ketanji Jackson. Remember when she was appointed? Marsha Blackburn asked her, what is a woman? Can you tell us what a woman is? Ketanji Jackson? Ketanji Jackson, who clerked for Stephen Breyer and helped him co-author the Gonzalez v. Carhart decision that argued that we should keep partial birth abortions legal or make them legal again, where you basically chop off the head of a baby as it's partially delivered outside of the vaginal canal. That's Ketanji Jackson, okay. And what's a woman? I don't know. I'm not a biologist, right? So the Supreme Court justice who can't tell you what a woman is really made a fool of herself. We didn't even pull those clips, but there's some interesting takeaways from this. Why is this significant? I mean, like, this has to be one of the most shocking cases and questions that the Supreme Court has ever had to look at. I mean, obviously, it's like you had got Dred Scott v. Sanford, like said the black man wasn't a person. We've had plenty of atrocious, disgusting Supreme Court decisions, but like even those weirdo, sicko racists, even the eugenicists in the 20th century who said, "Oh, the state should be able to castrate people who shouldn't, who we don't want to have kids. We should be able to sterilize people that we don't want to have kids." Even demons like that in the 20th century would have been laughing, 2-3 weeks ago, as our Supreme Court is like, so should we give a 12-year-old opposite sex hormones and pump them full of it until they're castrated for life and can never have children? Even the sicko, weirdo, eugenicist racists of the 20th century and 19th century, who are behind some of the most atrocious Supreme Court decisions, would be looking at this like we are a laughingstock. That's why it's so significant. We're dealing with the most fundamental questions of human nature. Like, what does it mean to be human? It's like, what's a man? What's a woman? If we can't answer that, if we can't answer those questions, then America is doomed for destruction. Like, America will just be destroyed. There will be no America if you can't answer those basic questions. And by the way, that's why I get so angry and vocal sometimes when Trump and Vivek Ramaswamy and others in the GOP deal with these issues with kid glove treatment, with a lot of the homosexual agenda stuff, the redefinition of marriage, children's rights. Right? Like, two gay dudes can basically just purchase children now. Do you understand that? Like, we're literally bringing back buying and selling people in the name of progress. The slaughter of babies in the womb. Like, it was our abdication and kid glove treatment of those issues decades ago that has led to this insane moment in America where we now can't answer these most basic questions. If you're not willing to deal with that and make that your biggest priority, then you won't conserve anything else in the long term that is lower down from that. What's a woman? What's a human? What's a baby? What's the right to life? We're not going to solve the border issue, the depression issue, the fentanyl, the suicidality. We're not going to fix any of that if we can't say what's a human, what's a woman, and should we geld the minors in Tennessee? That's why this is so significant. So, a few clips, a few segments, a few takeaways from the oral arguments at the Supreme Court on this question, this Tennessee law. Justice Alito responds to the federal government's argument that we have to geld the little kids to prevent them from depression and suicide. You know this argument, right? So Alito asks the federal government's Solicitor General this question. Check this out.
Well, can I ask you a question about the state of medical evidence at the present time? In your petition, you made a sweeping statement, which I will quote. "Overwhelming evidence establishes that the appropriate gender-affirming treatment with puberty blockers and hormones directly and substantially improves the physical, psychological well-being of transgender adolescents with gender dysphoria." That was in November 2023. Now, even before then, the Swedish National Board of Health and Welfare wrote the following. They currently assess, quote, that the risks of puberty blockers and gender-affirming treatment are likely to outweigh the expected benefits of these treatments, which is directly contrary to the sweeping statement in your petition. After the filing of your petition, of course, we saw the release of the Cass report in the United Kingdom, which found a complete lack of high-quality evidence showing that the benefits of the treatments in question here outweigh the risks. And so I wonder if you would like to stand by the statement that you made in your petition, or if you think it would now be appropriate to modify that and withdraw the statement that there is overwhelming evidence establishing that these treatments have benefits that greatly outweigh the risks and the dangers.
I, of course, acknowledge, Justice Alito, that there is a lot of debate happening here and abroad about the proper model of delivery of this care and exactly when adolescents should receive it and how to identify the adolescents for whom it would be helpful. But I stand by that there is a consensus that these treatments can be medically necessary for some adolescents, and that's true no matter what source you look at.
So, oh man, I mean, you know, Clarence Thomas is just the best, but Justice Alito's pretty good. I mean, that was like really well handled, wasn't it? So I don't know if you caught that, but he starts with this question of like, you make this sweeping statement from a few months ago in this case that there is overwhelming evidence that this type of care, and you know, care, okay, like we got to stop using the euphemisms of the left, but you know what they mean, right? They mean puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, okay? That these are necessary. That was the language of the federal government's case by the Solicitor General, right? Necessary care to prevent suicidality and depression amongst minors with gender dysphoria. Overwhelming evidence that it's necessary to prevent minors killing themselves who have gender confusion. And Alito just goes, the UK and Sweden have both published sweeping studies showing there is no improvement in mental health for minors who receive such medical intervention. Would you like to revise your statement, Solicitor General? And she goes, oh, I understand there is a lot of debate regarding these issues, and I agree that but I still believe these things can be medically necessary. Well, that's not what you were just saying. You went from overwhelming evidence that it's necessary to prevent minors from killing themselves to it can be medically necessary. Well, that's not that. That seems like a lot softer than what you were just saying. Samuel Alito just brilliantly poking holes into all of this. And by the way, what's hilarious, right, is that like American leftists always look to the UK or to European countries when they're like, we need more of that kind of health care. We need more of that. When in reality, in the UK, they're like drastically stepping back from the transgender mania as it pertains to minors. And in America, you know, our strangio transgender lawyers are just saying full steam, we need to chemically castrate more minors. By the way, I don't know if you caught this, but Samuel Alito quoting Elizabeth Prologer, or whatever her name is, Solicitor General, when she refers to transgender adolescents. I have said this on the show so many times, but let me just say this again. Anyone who talks about transgender adolescents or transgender minors or trans kids is either a pedophile or a groomer. I'm not all saying they're all pedophiles, but if they don't fit in that bucket, then they fit in the groomer bucket. If you talk about the sexual identities of minors, you are projecting a sexual identity onto children. If you're talking about the gender identity and sexual preferences of who minors think they are, and encouraging such delusion, that's what groomers do. They project a sexual identity onto minors. Hey, you know, you little 12-year-old girl, if you think you're a boy, we could chop your breasts off. We could give you testosterone so you grow hair on your breasts before I chop them off. Like, dude, what the hell's wrong with you, you sicko? Anyone that is encouraging that or using that kind of language to describe minors is a groomer. I don't care if you think you're doing it to be merciful. In reality, in practice, you are grooming them into a sexual identity and into an early exercise of sexuality. That's what groomers do. We need to begin speaking this way about these issues. Justice Alito then asks a question of lawyer Strangio, okay, the woman who thinks she's a man, and asks her a very interesting question that I think exposes almost all of the sort of inconsistencies with the transgender mania. Check this out.
Are there individuals who are born male, assigned male at birth, who at one point identify as female, but then later come to identify as male, and likewise for individuals who are assigned female at birth, at some point identify as female, identify as male, but later come to identify as female? Are there not such people?
There are such people. I agree with that, Justice.
So it's not an immutable characteristic, is it?
Well, I think people's understanding of it shifts, but the evidence shows that there is at least a strong underlying basis. And I think the normative reason for that particular consideration is whether or not this is something that someone should or could change, and whether they should have to change it in order to receive constitutional protections. And I think transgender status squarely fits within that.
So you see the picture, if you're watching this show on YouTube or Rumble, of Chase Strangio. Strange appearance, because that's actually a woman and not a man. But Samuel Alito's questioning here is like really interesting. We need to talk about this for a second. He asks lawyer Strangio, is it not true that one can be born female, right? Or what do they say? Assigned female at birth. By the way, gender's not assigned. It's just what you are. You are male or female at birth, objectively, like in the real world. And that can never change. But that's the language they use, right? Assigned female at birth. So Alito says, is it not true that one could be born female and then identify as male at one point and then later go back to identifying as female, meaning accepting who they really are in the real world, and vice versa, right? He says, could not one be born male, identify as female, and then go back to identifying as male? And Strangio says, yes, there are such people. There are such people. Alito is essentially asking, does the trans identity itself transition? I don't know. You guys follow? Y'all okay? Does the trans identity itself transition? Are trans identities transgender? That's the case, right? Their case is that gender is not immutable. It's fluid, man. Right? It's like, take another sip of that Haitian oregano, why don't you? You know, if you really think about it, one day we could be a cat, then we could be a snake, then we could be a man, then we could be a woman, man. We're just all kind of part of the pansexual universe, man. That's actually what they believe about gender, is that it's not fixed. It can change at any time and as many times as the individual claims that it can. So there are boys who say they're girls, but then later say they're actually boys. The premise of transgenderism is that gender is not fixed. It goes back and forth. It could change every day. So transgenderism is not an immutable characteristic then. So then why, Strangio lawyer, should we be gelding the kids who have a transitionary trans-identifying identity? Because I guarantee you, the medical treatments, the gender-affirming healthcare, that kind of intervention does end up being immutable, meaning unchanging. You can't change the fact that you chemically castrated yourself and chopped off your family jewels. You're not getting that back. You can never have children. So the treatment that ends in sterilization is immutable. So why should we be doing things to anyone, especially minors, that is permanent when you just admitted that the gender identity itself is not permanent and might go back and forth? So what if the girl who says she's a boy and then said she's a girl and then she's a boy later decides that she wants to be a girl and accept the gender identity that she actually is, but now it's too late because she chopped her breasts off and can never give birth? Are you starting to see how sick and demonic all this is? Of course, Strangio doesn't have any good answer to that. By the way, as a fun aside, okay, just on the whole like trans debate thing, you should, here, we're going to clip this so that you can go use this to just utterly destroy transgenderism in any debate. Question for the transgender mafia: sexualize and chemically castrate the minors mob. If gender identity is distinct from sex and your body so that a woman can be trapped in a male body, then why does the transgender movement insist on surgical intervention to support the gender identity? Because if having a penis doesn't prevent you from identifying identifying as a woman, then chopping it off won't make your identity any more real, since your body isn't the real you anyways. Either the LGBT mafia is right and gender and sex are distinct, in which case surgical intervention is pointless. Or gender and sex are the same thing and the entire transgender ideology is a lie. I just wanted an answer to that question. So you have to give it to Clarence Thomas, right? I don't know if you guys saw this recently. There was a report that came out, document on how much the Supreme Court justices talk. Basically, who talks the most in oral arguments? I bet you can't guess who talks the most on the court. Of course, it's the one who can't tell you what a woman is. That's the one who can't keep her yapper shut. Ketanji Jackson. You want to know who talks the least? Clarence Thomas, of course. Brilliant man. Brilliant man. Why? Because he doesn't need to. And when he does, like, demons just start, like, internally combusting. Like, when Clarence Thomas talks, like, liberalism is just, like, castrated. It's a gelded liberalism every time Clarence Thomas opens his mouth. So Clarence Thomas comes in and asks ACLU Strangio lawyer a very interesting question. He says, if you're successful, wouldn't the outcome be that you get different treatment based on sex? And I don't even think Strangio knows what just happened to her. Check this out.
I welcome the court's questions.
If you are successful, what would your remedy be?
Your Honor, if we're successful here, the remedy would be to enjoin the state of Tennessee defendants from enforcing SB 1 as applied to our individual plaintiffs.
So in practical terms, what would it be? What would you get? Wouldn't you get you would get different treatment based on sex?
So I don't think most people like even understood what just happened, and I certainly don't think Strangio understood what just happened. Clarence Thomas is actually using a like equal protections argument against the transgender mafia and the federal government's case that we should geld the minors of Tennessee. Check this out. So the government says that boys who think they're girls need estrogen treatment, right, to prevent suicidality. That's the Solicitor General's case. That's the whole federal government's case against Tennessee. And that girls who think they're boys need testosterone treatment in order to, support their mental health. And that it's discrimination on the basis of gender identity to deny them such care and treatment. Like, you understand, they're making a discrimination argument. They're saying these individuals need equal protection. And denying minors puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones is discrimination. Okay? But what if, this is what Clarence Thomas means. What if a boy went to the doctor at age 13 or 14 and requested testosterone? So what I'm talking about is I'm talking about a minor male without gender confusion who knows that he is a male and requests testosterone. He would not be given that treatment. So it's unequal treatment on the basis of sex. The treatment is only allowed to people who pretend to be the opposite sex. Do you understand that? So the minor male has to think he's a female, and then he, who is still a he, can get the testosterone treatment. So it's discrimination on the basis of gender identity, which is their case against the state of Tennessee. Are you okay? Did you follow that? That's what Clarence Thomas says. He said, would the outcome be that you get different treatment based on sex and gender identity? It's like, he's saying the result of what you want would be the very thing that you're accusing the state of Tennessee of. I'm not sure if I still fully grasp it. I think I understand it. But such is the insanity and upside down la land kingdom of transgenderism. Okay. And then we have to finish, of course, with Justice Sotomayor. Is she the stupidest Supreme Court justice? I mean, I used to think so. But after Ketanji Jackson, who talks the most, says I'm not a biologist. Who knows what women are? Maybe Ketanji took the spot. But so Sotomayor, who's long been declared to be probably the stupidest member of the Supreme Court, attempts to make her argument and her attempt to salvage the federal government's argument that we should geld the minors of Tennessee and all around the country. And you ready? This is the left-leaning Supreme Court justice's attempt to prevent Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas from just absolutely slaying and destroying Strangio and the federal government's case. Justice Sotomayor says, well, every medical treatment has risks. This is the transcript. She says, every medical treatment has risks, even taking aspirin. She goes, there's always going to be a percentage of the population under any medical treatment that's going to suffer. End quote. That was towards the end of the oral arguments. Justice Sotomayor is saying that permanently gelding, chemically castrating, and destroying the bone density of minors is gonna come with risks, just like you take a risk when you pop an aspirin to get rid of a headache. What? That's it. There you go. That's the liberal argument for why we should geld the minors of Tennessee. Is like, well, every medical treatment comes with risks. That was like the depth, okay, of the left-leaning justice's arguments, as expressed by Sonia Sotomayor. Aspirin has risks when you have a migraine, and as it turns out, so does chemically castrating 12-year-olds. What? That's nothing in common, okay? A headache is a bad thing that can be treated. Thinking you're the other gender should not be treated, except by saying, you're not a dude, Sally, you're a girl. That's gender-affirming healthcare, by the way. That's it. That was the brilliance of the conservatives poking holes in these arguments. And about the most persuasive argument that the left-leaning justices could come up with was Sotomayor's, that every medical treatment has risks. This is a conversation that's literally happening at the Supreme Court of the United States of America. You can go listen to all 2 hours of the oral arguments if you'd like, but this has to be put at the absolute top of everything that Christians, the church, and really, the conservative movement is talking about right now. If we can't resolve these things, and if we can't utterly crush this false anthropology, this demonic grooming and sexualization of children that will result in a generation of eunuchs suiciding minors and adults. And by the way, this train, if this train is left unhindered, you're going to have a generation of people who can't have kids, by the way. Like, I don't know if you've seen some of the studies on like LGBTQ affirming minors in Gen Z. It's like shocking. It's something like 35 or 40% of Gen Z identify somewhere on the LGBTQ spectrum, okay? Like, we already have an underpopulation problem. And then our next generation is going to shack up with the same sex or chemically castrate themselves so they can never have kids. Like, there are a plethora of reasons why the transgender movement or moment or mafia has to be utterly destroyed and crushed. Thankfully, under a Trump administration, maybe we can actually have some victories on that front. I'm certainly praying and hoping for at least another Supreme Court justice appointment in the next 4 years. But we are now being laughed at by the UK and European countries who think that we're insane for tripling down on this agenda on minors. I mean, and like, I wouldn't want to live in the UK. Like, they've got a lot of problems. But when European countries who are far more leftist, quote unquote progressive and pagan than America is looking at this and saying, what the hell is wrong with Americans? Like, I think we need to slow way down, and we need to begin elevating this fight, this conversation, and this dialogue to the very tippity top. And we need believers and churches and Christians and pastors to make this stuff serious, because it's at your schools and your communities. The children who attend your church are dealing with this stuff in their public schools and their private schools. Okay? So it's almost Christmas time, and yet here's the conversations happening at the Supreme Court. We need to pray that we have an overwhelming victory in this case, and Tennessee can utterly ban all of these treatments on minors and begin setting the kind of precedents we need to protect our children in America. Insanity. Thanks for joining the show today. Head on over to iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Give the show a rating and review, and go to Rumble in case I ever get digitally assassinated by the Google YouTube overlords. Okay, help the show. Make sure you go to lifeordeathcon.com, lifeordeathcon.com. Okay, you're gonna wanna make this conference. It's gonna be our first one. Become an ally of the White Rose Resistance at $35 a month or more, and you get a free ticket to Life or Death Con, and we'll email you the code so that you can get a free ticket. I will be at Pastor Gary Hamrick's church, Cornerstone Chapel, on January 22nd, Wednesday evening, for a conversation-style sit-down, and that will be the day before Life or Death Con at the Westin Downtown Hotel in Washington, D.C. Allie Bestucky, Eric Metaxas, Dr. George Grant, Dr. Nancy Piercy, myself, Isabel Brown, Joshua Broom. You don't want to miss it. lifeordeathcon.com. And remember, when you join at $70 a month at our air support level, you join our book club, Books in the Barracks. And we read books together, and then Moi hangs out with you live on Zoom, and we talk about the books, and we get a bunch of people. It's super fun. The next book we'll be reading is Megan Basham's book, Shepherds for Sale, How Evangelical Ministers Traded the Truth for a Leftist Agenda. We'll be talking about that in January. We're doing so much, but we need your help and support, so go to thewhiterose.life, become a monthly ally, and get your battle box in the mail to become a pro-life ninja and join us in rebuilding Christian resistance in America before it's too late. Until next week, I'm Seth Gruber, and this is The Seth Gruber Show.